talk a little bit about that, about the breakdown of the public-private distinction and why it's so corrosive and leads us to just be different people.
Yeah, I'm afraid I hope I don't butcher his name, but I believe it's Byung-Chul Han's book, Into the Swarm, or In the Swarm, that he talks about this collapse of the public-private distinction and kind of what this does for our sense of self. So if you're always kind of performing, then there's a loss of kind of conviction that comes with that, because you're always kind of fishing for the notification. So I think one practical effect that I've seen in myself, frankly, and in others, is that I've seen people kind of shift their views, not so much because they've been convinced, but because the affirmation of certain quadrants of their social media feed have really made this alluring. And so they've discovered, hey, if I talk this way, if I say this rather than that, people really like that. And so there's a sense of purpose and a sense of identity to this persona that I'm crafting online. And the collapse of the public-private distinction, I think, matters quite a bit, because so much of what we say to each other as human beings is meant for interpersonal conversation. So I can say something to you over dinner that I would never say publicly on Twitter, because that's not what that's meant to do. I'm not saying this to perform for other people. I'm saying this because it's something I want to communicate to you. When you drop that distinction and you have everything, I really don't like this language that we have now of receipts, because every time there's a scandal, somebody says, "Well, I have the receipts." And I get that there's a place to blow the whistle, and there's a place for that, especially in investigative journalism. But I'm afraid that we're all looking for receipts now. We're not just communicating honestly with each other, and we're running out of space as people to just be honest with each other, to be transparent, and to say, hey, tell me this, tell me what you believe, tell me that you don't like something I said, or that I need to repent of how I've talk to you, instead of screen capping me online and kind of just performing for your audience. And that's an element of theology too. Like how much of theology is honoring one another as made in the image of God, rather than trying to get internet clout based off each other. And if you start on that faulty point of trying to perform without that public-private distinction, it warps your theology, because now you're no longer thinking of people as fellow image bearers. You're thinking of people as basically instruments to your own kind of self-aggrandizement.
One of the most loving things anyone ever told me, Samuel, was that, hey, Shane, you're a very different person on Twitter and Facebook than you are on Upstream and in person when we sit around and chat in the office. You might want to try to bring those two personalities into accord. And I prefer the podcast, hospitable, personable version of you to the sharp-elbowed, provocative, sort of clickbaity online version of you. And on one level, I guess I bristled at that, because I said, well, you're just accusing me of being insincere on the internet. And on another level, it was obviously and immediately clear to me that is true. And I think the experiential disconnect is that the algorithm had got me, right? The medium had shaped me or catechized me, however you want to say it, in a way that had caused me to, without any obvious ill will or duplicity, to go on the internet, on my phone, on social media, on my laptop, and put stuff out there that I know is going to elicit that anger response from people, because it had trained me like Pavlov's dog with the bell and the treat, that, hey, if I put out there something that is deliberately provocative, particularly at this key moment in the daily news cycle, it's going to get a lot of attention. And I like the attention. I want the attention. So gradually, as you do that, you become a certain kind of person.
Absolutely.
To the world. It presents you a certain kind of way. And it can create this radical disconnect to where, Samuel, I've met people who were, I would say, I feel deeply sorry for them, because they are in the late terminal stages of this personality split between who they are online and who they are in person. Yeah. And it's almost always men, where they'll behave one way online, and they're just the most smart aleck, heresy hunting, pugilistic people you can imagine, often with anonymous accounts on Twitter or whatever. But then I know them in real life. I meet them in real life, and they're often either fairly meek people or just normal and, friendly in conversation. They wouldn't say the kinds of things to you in conversation that they say to people on Twitter. And I don't know that they've even noticed that that's what's happened. But having had that disease myself, and probably, I hope I'm in remission, but having, struggled with that over the years myself, I can feel the effect. I understand the effect. And it doesn't necessarily involve any obvious dishonesty on your part. It's just something that happens because of the medium. And I wonder if we've considered that enough. I wonder if we've taken it seriously enough in the role it's playing in disrupting our love for one another as Christians, and our fellowship with one another, and our ability to actually work together to be effective as agents of light in a culture of darkness.